Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining for the day three. In the previous two sessions, we have already covered the basics and the context grounding. Today's session is going to be a bit more important because we are going to discuss about trust layer governance, best practices around agentic, right? Just a quick heads up, guys. So today's session is going to be more of the conceptual and there would be a lot of questions around it. So just to maintain the flow, we would take all the questions at the end. If there are any questions you have, just put it on the chat. We'll try to answer it on the chat. But if there is anything which is left out, we'll make sure that we will address that at the end of the session. At the end of the session, we are going to give you ample amount of time to ask your questions live, or you can simply put it on the chat and I'll be monitoring the chat today, right? So we'll just park our questions for the end of the session, right? And in case you haven't already registered, please do register for the upcoming three sessions. The best part, in case you miss the session, you also get the recording and the presentation, which is getting uploaded on the same page where you registered, right? And with that, I'll give it to Manoj. Manoj, over to you. You can share your screen.
Thank you, Mukesh. Let me just share my screen with you all. Share. Is it visible, guys? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Manoj, yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Just give me a second. Yep. So again, guys, we'll start with something interesting as we did last time. So I'll just gonna show you something here, and you can just take 30 seconds and tell me in the comment box what do you think when you look at this image, specifically this shield. So what does this shield represents? Maybe you can take 30 seconds and just type in the chat. Protection, yes. Protect, great. I can see firewall, rare metal. Sushila has typed coverage, great. Interesting perspective. Safety, great. Ah, somebody has said AI trust layer. Protection again, attack, protect, safety and security. Yes, goal achievement, weapon, shield protection. Yeah, perfect. So thank you guys for all your response. Yes, you are right in some way. So just like you can see on the screen, this Captain America shield protects him and ensure fairness in the battle. The AI trust layer, which is the topic for this current session. So this AI trust layer protects AI powered automation from making wrong, biased, or unexplainable decisions. So in AI automation, you know that we need guardrails to ensure AI makes the right decision. Let me just go to that slide first. Okay, so you know that we need guardrails to ensure that your AI makes the right decision, it stays fair and follow the rules that we have set up in that model. So that's what the AI trust layer does for you. It acts like your Captain America, keeping AI trustworthy, transparent, and secure. Right? Now, the bigger question here is why this is important. Why do I need trust layer? So maybe you can think about a situation. Imagine if AI was making some financial approval or customer support decision or medical diagnosis. So without a sheet like your AI trust layer, bad decision actually could slip through, causing major problem. Or the other good example for could be, so I work for a bank, so maybe I can take a example from the banking domain. So imagine you're applying for a loan and the bank AI system rejects you. You ask why, but no one can explain it. So the question here is, maybe you can again use the chat box to type, would you trust that system where you are not able to identify why your loan got rejected? Just say yes or no. Yeah, no, obviously no, probably no, because AI needs to be fair, transparent, and also the important part here is explainable so that we can understand and trust its decisions. And that is why business uses your AI validation rule and bias monitoring to make AI more reliable. And as you can see on the screen, these two things, uh, AI validation rules and your bias monitoring. So these are actually key ways to build your AI trust. So what are your AI validation rules here? So this means checking if AI is following a specific business rule which you have set in your model or not. Again, I'll take the same example. So for example, this loan approval system. So it should not reject application just because of gender or age or any value. So validation rule here ensure that your AI model take fair decision. The other uh, uh, important factor here is your bias monitoring, because as you already know, you have worked with ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and other models before. So AI learns from the past data, but think about that. If the data is biased, AI can actually make unfair decisions. So bias monitoring helps detect and fix this issue so that AI actually trusts, or you can say treats everyone fairly, so that you actually gain more trust in that. Again, people also don't trust AI if they can't understand it. So that is why we use. I'm not sure if you're like following me on LinkedIn, but on LinkedIn I usually write weekly articles on some of the AI stuff, and I talk about explainable AI. So these two methods, SHAP and LIME, I've also mentioned in some of my article as well. So here we are going to learn SHAP and LIME both, and this is about how actually AI make the decision. So SHAP is your shapely additive explanation, and LIME is again local interpretable model agnostic explanation. So moving on to the next slide here. First, we'll understand what is SHAP. So SHAP is a very popular method for explaining machine learning models by assigning each feature an importance value for a particular prediction. Maybe you can think about it. It is actually based on a game-based theory where each feature is considered as a player, and that player is actually contributing to the final prediction. So it has got some values and all, and these are the steps which your SHAP actually uses in the calculation. So first one is your baseline prediction. What does that mean? That means is, so baseline prediction is, you can say, is your starting reference point for explaining AI model decision. It represents your model expected output before considering any specific input feature. So you can say typically baseline prediction is the average model output across the entire data set which you have trained on. Again, I'll take the same example, loan approvals. So if you are predicting loan approval, the baseline here could be the average probability of approval of loans across all the applicants. It could be 40%, 50%, 60%, it could be anything. So that is your base. The last one here is feature contribution measurement. Here again we have taken each feature here. So each feature is tested by adding or removing it from the model to see how much um the actual prediction gets changed with that. Maybe I can give you one more example here. So again, we'll take the same example, loan approval AI model, which actually predicts whether a customer will be granted a loan or not. Because this is a very simple example and a common one. That is, I have taken that. So if you are like applying for a loan, the bank would check your first thing is your credit score, your income level, the loan amount which you are applying for, your debt to income ratio, and your employment status here, right? These like these 5 6 are your primary things which your bank will look into and uh, provide you the score. So here maybe I can say the credit score is 600, which is kind of a pretty bad for getting a loan, so it should be more than 700 something. But okay, let's suppose if the credit score is 60, and based on that credit score, SHAP will give you a value. Let's suppose 0.030 minus, because credit score is less than that threshold value. The second one which I said was income level. So maybe income is close to $70,000. So again, 70,000 is a bit on the higher side for some reason. So maybe we can say that this income is on the higher side. So we'll give a positive sharp value. Then comes your loan amount. So this is another big factor. So if your income is 70,000 and you're applying a loan for 20,000, then that is fine. But if your income is 70,000 and you are applying for 700,000, something like that, then again this this player would also come into consideration. The fourth factor is your debt to income ratio. Again, you have already earning 70,000, but you're already paying a loan of 50,000 per month. Again, this will also get into the consideration. The last one is your employment status. So if you're employed, that means you are getting regularly income, and this will also get into that consideration. And based on all these feature set, you will get a kind of a score. So first one is a credit score, which was kind of a negative. Then income level, which was slightly on above the average side. Loan amount is high, so there is a high risk attached to it. Debt to income ratio, for 70,000 salary, you are already paying 50,000, so you are left with just 20,000. So it is again a kind of a risk here. But your employment status is your full-time employee, so that means you still have like a recurring income to pay that debt. So based on all these factors, as you can see on the screen, so model, we have got a model on the left side which contains all the input parameter. It will go to the SHAP, which will do all these calculation based on all the parameters that you have passed here. And then it will just give you some red and blue, okay, this is positive, this is negative, or something like that. And based on that, you will get an actual score, that okay, is it like greater than the threshold value which we set earlier, or it is less. So what are the like probability of getting a loan. So this is how you can think about how you can use AI to explain that thing, right? So this is model number one that we have used. The other model that is going to come into the picture is LIME. LIME, as I said earlier, it is local interpretable model agnostic explanation. What is LIME? So LIME is a technique used to explain why AI makes a specific decision. So in SHAP, so we'll come to that comparison later. But in SHAP, it was all the players, but here within LIME, it is one case at a time. So it also help us understand complex AI model by providing simple, easy to read explanation for individual prediction. You can also think of Lime as a translator between a complicated AI model and a human user. So first understand how it works. Maybe then I can give you an example around the same. So first thing is it actually pick a prediction to explain, like you can say a specific data. I'll take the same example. A bank's AI model predict that a customer loan is rejected. So this is the output, something like that. The next step that we are going to do within Lime is, so Lime, in that Lime we slightly altered copies of the data, like it we changes small part of, maybe we can increase the salary, we can lower the debt, or we can also increase or decrease the credit score. So here we have altered the data. The third step here is we run the model again, and again it will give me a kind of a new prediction. So here the AI model makes new prediction based on the modified input. So that is step number three. Step number four here is if we think okay the data is right, or maybe for some cases we might think okay this AI model might. So the fourth step here is if we need to think okay AI model actually needs to be trained on that the data that we have mimicked here. So we will just train that. And the fifth and the most important part here is we will tell them the feature importance. Okay, uh, maybe your credit score was the issue, or something else, maybe your income to debt ratio, or your salary, or your employment status. So based on all these stuff, you get a result, and you also get a result why AI produces that result to you. And again, you can also tweak your model in such a way that it produces the right result, because there might be a possibility where you are passing the right data, but you are not getting the actual or exact output which you want. So on paper, if you do the calculation, it is working fine, but if you're passing it to the model is not behaving as expected. So in that case, you can just take out one instance, one feature, pass it to model, tweak it, and then see which is like causing that issue, right? So this is how like your SHAP and LIME works. And this is, you can say, the basic difference between. So I'll not spend like too much of a time here because I've already explained you the concept here. But this is the difference between SHAP and LIME. If you see at the bottom, example output. So example output for SHAP would be, it will say, okay, your credit card score or your credit score contributed 30% to the rejection because it was less than what we wanted, but your income was in the higher package, so it got increased by 20%. So this would be your SHAP output. So that is how your model basically tells you how it calculates all the things. Whereas for Lime, it just say your low credit score was the reason for rejection. So that's the difference between these two. SHAP actually gives you a value, some percentage or some numerical value, whereas your Lime model will just return you something, a particular phrase, something like that. So that is the difference between SHAP and LIME. The next one is, which I'm going to talk about, is UiPath trust layer. So we also have a trust layer, and this is on the screen. You can see the architecture of the AI trust layer. So I'll just talk about how the data flows into this trust layer, and then I'll hand it over to Satish, who will just give you more understanding on all these concepts. So as you can see on the screen, this is my architecture. So we have got like few steps: 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 6, 8, and then there are a few sections. So the first step is is sending the request. So on the left hand side, you can see we have got your UiPath product and services. So which act as a your front end where you send a request to the LM gateway with a full prompt. And here full prompt could be might include your customer input, your internal prompt engineering, and if you're like chatting with the AI model, it could also include your past data. So first step is you're sending the request to the LLM gateway. The second one here is, so when it gets passed to the LLM gateway actually verifies and authenticate the request using some secure tokens. Maybe you can think of this like entering into a secure building and showing your ID card there. And again, some of the rate limit are also applied to the user. So that is part two. Part three actually here is the policy check. So so once the request gets passed to this LM gateway, the system then checks if there are any policies that might prevent the request from being processed. So if everything is clear, obviously the request move forward. But for instance, if there's a policy that restricts certain type of data, and data, it again, data could be anything, from being processed, the system will enforce it here. So it will not move to the next level. The fourth one here is, so it now, okay, third one is done. Fourth one is you're forwarding the request to proxy. So now request is translated and sent to the correct third party AI model using UiPath credentials. So on the right hand side, you can see that this LLM proxy. The fifth step here is processing by the AI model on the right hand side. So the third party model process the request. And again, it is very important to note that these models do not store any previous data. It is kind of a your, you can say, your stateless architecture with your web follow. So it ensures your privacy. So for example, if your model is generating a response to your chatbot query or to your uh, UiPath apps query or UiPath Studio query, it doesn't remember the past queries once it's done. So it doesn't hold any value or anything at their end. Then comes the sixth part where, okay, where the AI model returns the response back to the UiPath trust layer. Again, here, no customer data is stored or logging outside UiPath cloud. So we are not storing anything there. And the seventh part here is your metadata logging. So there's a difference between data and metadata. So metadata is your data about data. So the LLM gateway logs metadata, not the actual data for tracking purposes. And these data could be your API usage, your number of tokens, the initiating product, like whether the request is coming from UiPath Studio, Studio Web, apps, or some chat, some kind of a chatbot, and user or the tenant ID. So this metadata might get stored for logging purposes, but your actual data is not storing anywhere on the complete architecture. And once everything gets processed, the LLM gateway sends the process data result back to the requesting UiPath product for the further action. So this is like whole architecture and the complete, you can say, your data flow, how the data is flowing from one application to another. With this, because I'm done with my session, so with this I'll just hand it over to Satish, who will like give you a deep understanding of this architecture, governance, security, why it is required. So thank you, and over to you, Satish.
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. So I'll quickly start sharing my screen, okay, and we'll go from there. So please, let me know once you're able to see my screen. It's visible to everyone?
Yes, visible.
Yes.
All right. So, Manoj has described about how the data, flow between different, the components that we have for the AI trust layer, right? uh, so we have a few things that we need to remember here is that we have a LM gateway, which is basically a central console, which takes care of a lot of things that happens at the UiPath cloud platform. Then we have LLM proxy that also act as a boundary and guardrail so that your zero data retention or the training can use your customer data. So that happens through a lot of the communications that happen. But before going further detailed about how it works, what all configuration need to be done, how we should be able to configure the UiPath AI trust layer, let's talk about why it is important, why it is necessary to have a AI data policy for the enterprises, right? We all have seen that the generative AI model has expanded dramatically in year 2024. There are a lot of chat interfaces made easy for everyone to engage with AI. You can type your query prompts and it can basically broadening your applicability to the AI, right? And with a lot of these huge cases, we have seen people are utilizing the content generation, text completion, and a lot of other stuff to do the automation, right? But the one important thing that is still a persistent concern across all of the enterprises, where is my data being sent? Will the privacy and security of my data will be protected? Are my prompts and the responses are compliant with my company regulatory standards? Similarly, there are a lot of concerns about the data and the developer permissions for the generative AI development. Is my data that is being used to train the general third-party model? Or do the right developer have the access to these generative AI features? Similarly, there are also a lot of concern about will this model or the third-party model which is being utilized by the UiPath, will those model make my data available to my competitors for their development purpose? So there are a lot of questions around this. But to answer of all of these security and data privacy concern, the answer is UiPath AI Trust Layer. So UiPath AI Trust Layer basically takes care of a lot of stuff, right? It talks about how you should be able to handle the PII, PHI, and sensitive data. It's also talk about how you should be able to restrict the policy so that the data resides in your tenant or the third party model should not be able to use your data for training their LLM models, right? So let's talk about some of the, border concern, some of the, the concerns which everyone thinks for. And I'll start with the PII, PHI, and sensitive data masking. And this is a very common concern actually. What UiPath has done is UiPath has created a couple of GenAI based activities, right? Those activities help you to protect your data to be masked before it can be sent to the LLM model. So what UiPath says is, you being the customer, you are owner of your data. It's on you to decide whether you want to send that data to the LLM model or not. If you want to send that LLM model data without masking, you can do that. But if you want to mask that data, you should be able to do by utilizing the activities, which is generative AI activities available on UiPath Studio. You should mask that data before it has sent to the Gen AI models. So for any such concerns where you have PII, PHI, or sensitive data, the golden rule is you have to mask that data before it has to be sent to LLM model, right? That means it must be manually added as a step in your UiPath workflow to mask that data before you call the LLM model. So let's take example that you are reading an email, right? And that email contains lots of PII information. So what will be the correct way to handle the LLM call? So what you can do in those cases is you can basically mask that PII information before the actual call happens for the LLM models. So if you look at the example, and we have a complete video for this, maybe Mukesh will, put that video link if you want to see how it works. But just for understanding purpose, if you want to utilize this services, which is basically masking a data, what you can do is you can utilize this UiPath Gen AI activities. The first step will be obviously to read the email with the integration services or any other activity that you want to use like Outlook, right? And then use this connector activity. Then you have the output. That output will basically take care of data masking. So say, for example, you have an email that is coming with a person, right? It had dates, it has the order number, it has, personal informations like email and the mobile number. What it will do actually, it will translate that email address with some dummy, masked variables that it will understand, but it will not be visible to everyone, right? But one thing to note is it is responsibility on us. It is responsibility on developer. It is responsibility on the architecture that we are designing for the automation to mask the data before we do a LLM call, right? So that's about the PII and PHI handling. You can look at the video to understand how this can be done, how it can be configured, and how it will help you to redact the email with the masking. The other thing that we need to talk or the people are concerned about is harmful content moderation, right? Similar to the PII, PHI, we are also concerned about what if my LLM model returns a content which is having a hate speech, or it contains some misinformation, or it contains exploitations, right? How we should be able to uphold the trust of my automation, right? So there are two things here. One is by default, enabled by the UiPath, all the AITL interactions, that means all the call that happen to third-party LLM via LLM gateway and LLM proxy, it will be automatically enabled. So unlike PII, PHI masking, which is to be done by the developer, where developer has to ensure that he has to mask the data, for harmful content moderation, it's a platform specific feature where the platform will ensure LLM provider built-in content moderation capability. Let's take an example that UiPath is utilizing Azure OpenAI, right? And if you want to do that it should not return, the output should not contain the harmful content, or it should not contain the hate speech, that will be automatically taken care by the policy that is given by the Azure OpenAI. But that is not the best way to do, because your enterprise might have some different requirement or some different legal liabilities to mitigate those risks. So UiPath is also coming up with the guardrails, where basically you should be able to adjust the filtering and strictness based on your organization need. So there will be two level of the content moderation that will happen. One is at the LLM model that is being used by the UiPath. So if UiPath is using Azure OpenAI, the LLM provider policy will ensure that there is no harmful content will be generated. That's number one. And then the second thing is that in the AI trust layer, there will be filtering option where you should be able to put some of your guardrails so that the filtering and strictness will happen for your organization need. This is planned for UiPath 25.4. So we might see that feature coming up in a few days. That's in a roadmap already for the UiPath, and UiPath is currently building those features. Next, moving to other, security considerations and other, things that we talk here and there, and we, have concerns about, right? PII, we already talked, hateful content and violence content, and all those is covered. Now, there are also, concerns about how my data is stored, how that authentications happen there, how the credentials are stored. Will my developer would be able to access everything, or will the cloud or the automation cloud will have the data moved from one region to another region, and all those kinds of concerns. So let's take them step by step. So as we discuss about the LLM gateway is basically hosted in a same region where your UiPath organization is hosted or the tenant is hosted. So if you are European Union organization or tenant, your LLM gateway will be hosted in that particular tenant and region only. It will not have any contact or any connections with the US based deployments. Other thing that you need to note here is UiPath uses its cloud identity server or UiPath cloud identity server for role-based access control. So you should be able to control the behavior of LLM usage in each product through the help of role-based access controls, right? And then there are ways through which you should be able to do a secure authentication to call the LLM gateways. How LLM gateways are connected, right, is based on type of LLM that is being used. Some LLM gateway use OAuth type, some LLM gateway use API key, some LLM gateways use different kind of authentication mechanism. For example, if you want to connect to Azure OpenAI, Azure OpenAI supports API keys. Similarly, for OpenAI, it's also support the API keys. But there are some models which basically supports client and secret IT, which is OAuth based authentication. And all those configurations, because you are actually utilizing the LLM, which is subscribed by the UiPath, right? You have not subscribed to that LLM directly. There are ways where you can bring your own LLM, right? You can configure your own model to utilize in a UiPath cloud. I'll showcase you that in the next few minutes, how you should be able to configure your own LLM. But in most of the product, like Autopilot or Autopilot for developer, or for document understanding, or for any activity that uses GenAI or LLM based capability, they uses UiPath subscribed LLM model, right? So the LLMs are provisioned in a same region where your tenant is, and there will be a fallback region used only if there are product unavailability. But in most of the cases, all these will be encrypted. All these will be following the data storage and retention policy. In most of the cases, it will follow and adhere the UiPath data retention policies and regulations such as GDPR. And one thing that you need to note, there is a LLM gateway, right? And then there is a LLM proxy there in the architecture, right? So no training on customer data will happen. Contract of LLM gateway with UiPath provider, LLM provider with the UiPath, strictly restrict them that the customer data will not be stored outside the UiPath cloud boundaries. It will never go to the LLM provider, and LLM provider will not be able to use your customer data to train their model. So that is all being done with the third party LLM agreements, and UiPath also disclose all third party agreements and everything for everyone to look at. So you can look at the documentation and you can look at how that third party agreement has been made. Next thing that we need to talk about is how we should be able to configure it, where we should be able to configure it, and what all features does it provide, right? Before I'll go to the UiPath orchestrator, I just quickly wanted to touch that the UiPath AI trust layer allow you to directly oversee and govern UiPath Gen AI feature across all the UiPath products, right? Its purpose is to act as one administrative panel from where you should be able to control and provide the comprehensive management and strict control the capabilities, right? This capability provide you the auditing. This capability provide you the usage summary. This capability provide you the how the data has been shared or where it has been reused outside the UiPath environment and all those kind of things. They have a couple of tabs. The first one is a usage summary, which basically gives you the clear picture of AI utilization across your organization. Then you have another one, which is called audit, that gives you oversight of all the AI model related operation, whether developer has utilized that, or whether who has used that AI model calls, how many calls has been made, and all those kinds of information will be available on the second tab, which is audit. I'll showcase you in next few minutes. Then you have this autopilot for everyone tab, where you should be able to configure who inside your organization should be able to use the autopilot or not. And then you have for the context grounding. There are few new features. I talked about that. Bring your own LLM model. That is currently in preview, and that you should be also able to configure. Say, for example, I do not want to use UiPath provided Chat GPT or UiPath provided Anthropic or Gemini model for the agent builder. I want to use my Azure OpenAI, which is being hosted and managed by my organization in the UiPath, how I should be able to do that. So let's quickly look at that. For that, what I'll do, I'll stop sharing my screen here, that is the PPT, and I'll quickly bring the UiPath orchestrator in front of everyone. Let me know once you are able to see that UiPath orchestrator, and just type it's visible, yes or no. It's visible?
Yeah, visible. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So the first thing that we need to look at is how we should be able to configure the UiPath AI trust layer. So the thing that you need to do is you have to be admin of your orchestrator before you can go there. So from this one, you have to click on the admin tab. Once you click on that admin tab, you will go to the organization and then you will have tenants, which is listed here. For my example, there is a one organization which is called RPA demo, and then I have a dev tenant. And this AI trust layer setting will be managed at organization level. You should be able to configure and deploy the policy at the tenant level, but everything can be managed from one single screen, and that can be accessed from this organization and the UI AI trust layer. This screen will come. And then the first tab, which is usage summary, you should be able to see how many LLM calls has been made. And here you should be able to filter. My UiPath tenant is hosted in European Union region, and that's the reason EU is listed here. But if you have complex structure where some of your tenants are in European Union and some of tenants are in US, you should be able to see that here. Then you should be also able to see which all models are being utilized for the LLM access that we have used in UiPath, right? So for example, Autopilot is using Anthropic model for summarization. Similarly, UiPath for using Autopilot for developer, that is using ChatGPT 4.1 to generate the expression. So different activities uses different models. And the uses of those all model you should be able to see from this here, and you should be able to see on the basis of tenant. You should be also able to see on the basis of product. So I have used only three products: agent service, which is agent builder, we're going to cover in the next session. Then Autopilot, Mukesh has given a wonderful example using the cars, how you should be able to utilize that. And then Gen AI based activities. So you should be able to see that. Then the second tab is audit tab. Audit tab tells you what exact information, what exact thing that has been done by which product in UiPath, right? Now you can see that here I have used Autopilot for everyone in the dev tenant for real-time translation. That is in the U, and the model used is ChatGPT 4.0 mini. So all those informations will be here. You should be able to export from here. You should be able to view the export, and there are some limitation on how many numbers of export that you can do, because it is still in, some of the features are still in preview. But one thing that you need to note is the audit feature provides a 60-day overview of request and action. So if you want to store for the historical data, you need to take care of that by downloading and storing it somewhere, right? Because it will give you only the 60-day data. Now, the third tab, which is the most important one, and that you should understand how you should be able to define the policy for your organization with the help of AI Trust Layer. So let's take an example that I wanted to enable the AI-based component for my organization. And to do so, the first thing that you need to do is build a policy. And how you should be able to do build a policy? There are two ways of doing it. One, you can add a policy using here AI Trust Layer, and for the agents that you can do from here. The other way of doing is you can go to the automation ops, which is also available from the same screen. And if you go to the automation ops and then you go to the governance tab, from there also you should be able to generate a policy. So if you see here, the governance, the same policy which is here, and this is the same policy. Two different screen does exactly the same thing. The only difference here is the automation ops gives you more control of the governance, because it allows you to create the governance for a different set of products like UiPath Studio and all those things. The one which is available here only provides you the capability to build a policy for AI Trust Layer and the agent. So all you need to do is you need to click on AI Trust Layer, and then the new page will open where you have to specify and select and deselect what you wanted to control. If you look at here, it actually redirected to the same page, which is the governance, right? And then you have some of these toggle buttons. With the help of these product toggles, you should be able to configure what all AI model based component you wanted to enable for your UiPath orchestrator. Say, for example, you wanted to enable LLM for agents, you should be able to do yes and no. In apps, yes and no. Autopilot, yes and no. Document understanding, yes and no. Healing agent, yes and no. Studio and web, yes and no. Similarly for the test manager, similarly for UiPath automation feature, similarly for UiPath Gen activity. This way you should be able to configure. Other thing that you need to know here is some of these things are preview, still the work is done, it is not working, but it will be available soon. The other thing is that you have control of input and output saving, right? Because some organization require the auditing has to happen on the basis of the, what has happened with the input and output, and they need to provide that to auditor. So these options will be pretty helpful to store those data. Other thing that you need to note here is UiPath internally uses different model provided by the different LLM provider. You should be able to configure which model, not the model, but which provider you should be utilizing into the UiPath orchestrator. So I should be able to enable Azure OpenAI, Gemini, or Anthropic from here. And if you look at here, you will understand which all models will be used for which product. So similar, you can see that for context grounding, UiPath uses Azure OpenAI. For Gen AI activity, Google, Gemini, Anthropic, Azure OpenAI. For apps, Azure OpenAI. So for most of the cases, UiPath uses Azure OpenAI, and for some of the products, it uses Google, Gemini, and Anthropic too. So that is the summary of how the models and the providers are being used. You should be able to enable and disable that from here. And all you need to do is just save. And then once you save, that will be enabled for, right. There is a question in a chat, if there is a policy conflict, for example, at tenant, at the group layer, which take the precedent. So there is a priority. On the basis of priority, take the precedent. So you can define a priority, and according to, so if I have two policy, one with the priority 1 and one with the priority 2, the priority 1 will take the precedence over the priority 2. So that's how it happens. Now, the other thing that you need to note here is autopilot for everyone. I think Mukesh has already covered everything, so I don't need to cover here. Context grounding part we have also covered, but I'll cover how the AI trust layer help in context grounding, but not now, after covering this LLM configuration. So this is a long ask from everyone, including me. I used to reach out to UiPath product manager every other week saying, hey, when I can bring my own model? I do not want to use the model that you have configured and provided for context grounding. I want to utilize another model for my document embedding and creating an index. How I should be able to bring that, right? And that is now currently available in a preview. Soon it will be available in a public preview and then in a general release. So how you should be able to do that? So for that means, say for example, for the agent builder, I want to utilize the model which is hosted in my organization, not the one which is subscribed by the UiPath, right? How I should be able to do that. So all you need to do is I click on the add. Then what you can do, you can select the vendor. So as of now, it provides the capability to bring the models from OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, Amazon Bedrock, Google Vertex, and OpenAI V1 compliant. That means DeepSeek and a lot of other models which basically follow the same signature of OpenAI. Those can be utilized, right? Then you need to select the, let's take example that I want to utilize Azure OpenAI. Then you have to select the model. One thing that you need to note here is, as of now, all the models with the API versions are not available. Only selected models with the API versions are available. So you need to make sure when you want to do a connection between the UiPath orchestrator and bringing your own model, the deployment API version should match, right? That means when I am bringing a model from Azure OpenAI, the deployment that has to happen on Azure OpenAI should contain the exact API version which is listed here. So say, for example, I want to utilize GPT-4o, the API version which should match is 13, 05, and 24. Then only it will work, otherwise the connection will not work. So you can select that, and then you can select for which product you want to utilize that particular model, right? This is the flexibility. Bring your own model for on product, right? For agent builder, I want to utilize this, or for UiPath Gen activities, I want to use this, or for test manager, I want to use this, rather than what has been given by the UiPath. So you should be able to do that. So just let's take example that for my agent builder, right? I should be able to select this agent, right? And then you have to select the folder where you want to do that. And then you have to select the connector, and then it will give you the connections that you have created using the UiPath integration services, because the LLM model connections happen through integration services. So to bring your own LLM model, the first thing that you need to do is build the connection to that LLM in the integration services. Once that is done here, you should be able to select and utilize here. So let's take example that if I need to use Azure OpenAI, right, connection, what I can do is I can come here. I have already few connections. What I can do, I can click on the add connections. I'll say connect to Azure OpenAI, which is this one, right? It will ask you three things, right? Those three things are nothing but your Azure Open API key. That's the most important one. And then the deployment endpoint. So I have created one practice Azure OpenAI resource. So all I need to give is this one, and then this one, which is the resource name, and then the API version, which is this one, right? By utilizing this, you should be able to connect to the LLM, and this LLM can be utilized inside the UiPath product like Agent Builder or anything. There are many things that require after this feature will be enabled, that how I should be able to utilize the custom model user, or how I should be able to fine tune the model, because that is the biggest ask from everyone. UiPath models, or the model that is given by the UiPath subscription, is not fine tunable. You can't do anything about that, right? You can't fine tune that with your own data set. That means you have to bring your own model and you have to fine tune that using your own data set outside the UiPath boundaries. And that is possible with the help of this. But all of those things like fine tuning, usage summary, guardrails, deployments, monitoring, has to happen at the provider platform, not at the UiPath, because UiPath is just making sure that you are bringing your own model, but it's your own responsibility to monitor, guardrail, and do everything. The call will still happen through the LLM gateway, so that it will ensure that there is no data leakage. Or because what will happen is there might be the case that you have bring your own model, right? But there are the cases where you have to use the fallback. So you can see this checkbox here: use UiPath managed subscription if connection fails. That means UiPath has given you the option that you can utilize your own model, and if there is some problem with your own model, you should be able to utilize the model which is given by subscription, right? And this opens up worlds of possibility. So you can do many things, right? With the help of these features, like there are questions, how I should be able to utilize my own model for the context grounding. I do not want to utilize the model which is given by the UiPath. So all those things can be done from here. So with this, you should be able to do, and I'll go back to my presentation because I also wanted to cover some of the things that we have talked in the previous session, which is basically context grounding, right? So, sorry, not this PPT. I was in this PPT. So I covered this one, and then I'll quickly cover this one, and then we'll cover about UiPath context grounding. So as I told you, responsible AI is a bigger concern for everyone across the globe. It's not only UiPath, not only you and me. Those are, concerned about it. But how we should be able to make it more compliant, right? The obvious answer is that we have to follow the industry best practices. We have to follow the attestation. We have to follow the best practices and the regular monitoring. And we have to follow mandatory compliance training that has to happen for every employee in the our organization and also at the UiPath organization. So if you look at how UiPath is managing all of these things, for GDPR, it complies through the regular review of third-party processes to ensure that there is no data which is not following the GDPR compliance. Similarly, for HIPAA, it has HIPAA Type 2 attestation completed, AITL and context grounding attestation and is due. It will happen once the 25.4 release happen, and then after they'll apply for that compliance attestation. As of now, not. If you want to utilize the HIPAA compliance PHI, you need to have a business associate agreement, and then only you should be able to do that. Also, even if you do all of these things, but still you need to do or monitor the performance of LLM to prevent it bias and drift, right? Which Manoj talked earlier, and how you should be able to do with the help of different models and different tools available in the market. UiPath also does, but it's the customer responsibility to ensure that the model that you are selecting for your use case is suitable. Similarly, for ethics and responsible AI, automatic harmful content filtering happens through AI trust layer. These models are stateless, ensures that no retentions of prior data. That means it will not store the transactional and the customer data. It will forget about what the previous call was made. Mandatory compliance training happens for every employee in UiPath, including developers and contractor, to ensure that they do not unwillingly or willingly do something which will leak that data. And then the third party AI component rigorously access for the security ethics and the bias prevention. There are a lot of test happens for the platforms and the product, which ensures that it is compliant, it is secure, and it is having all the technical and administrative safeguard in the UiPath automation cloud. Now, let's talk about the context grounding component architecture, right? And Manoj and Mukesh has talked about this in the previous session that we have covered. All I wanted to tell you is UiPath trust layer is also used there. It is not only that when you use GenAI based activities or agent builder, then only AI trust layer will be used. All the UiPath product which uses the LLM will has to go through the UiPath trust layer. So let's take example of the context grounding. Context grounding, what we do is we ingest the business data, we do some semantic and similarity search and the RAG based automations and implementation. UiPath has their own UiPath managed vector DBs, but every call that happens to LLM happens through the LLM gateway, right? So that's the I wanted to share here. One thing that you also need to note here is while you build the automation and when you run the automation, it has to be a different set of activities, right? So let's take example that I wanted to upload the UiPath security handbook for a chatbot completion. So what will be the steps that I'll do? The first step that I'll do is UiPath security handbooks will be uploaded to the orchestrator in the storage bucket, because from there we should be able to read that document, and then with the help of GenAI activity, which is called index and ingest, it will create an index with the help of UiPath AI trust layer, right? You should be also able to use another storage bucket, which is not inside the UiPath platform. You can connect to the Google Drive, or you can connect to S3, or you can connect to anywhere. All you need to do is write a workflow for that. But ultimately, you have to pass that document to the GenAI based activity, and the index will be created with the help of that trust layer security considerations, and the data will be indexed and stored in a UiPath automation cloud. While in the runtime, this is all about the left side that you see is all about when you design the automation, right? Because one way of doing is going to the orchestrator, uploading document it once, right? How about if you want to refresh the index, right? That you should, that means somebody has to manually go and upload that, right? So you can also create a workflow for that. You don't need to basically do those activity manually every time when there is a new document or when there is a new data that need to be added for the index. Those all things can be done in the design time. But at the runtime, what happens actually is whenever you are using a GenAI based activity or agent builder or apps with the chat, the query will happen to LLM via trust layer, right? And then the AI trust layer will be again used to pass that data where that the data flow was shown, right? So basically how it will happen here is you will have this data sources where you have indexes, you have orchestrator bucket, and you have integration services connection. Then you will have this context grounding clients, which is basically AI trust layer admin UI. And there you should be able to configure which application or product should be able to use that index. Now, what will happen, the similar to what Manoj shared a few minutes back, all the call has to happen through the LLM gateway, the third party model, so that the AI trust layer will control the data residency, and a lot of other things. This is all about the internal working of how the RAG or how the context grounding work. So they have a lot of component built there. There is a RAG controller, there is a dataset controller, there is an index controller, and all those things. And there is a permissioning, then metadata storage, then you have vector DB. But all you need to know here from this bigger diagram is any call that you make to the third party model has to go through AI trust layer, and that has to pass through the LLM gateway. where all the configurations of your data, privacy, security, authorizations, harmful content moderation, everything happens there, right? So with this, I'll stop here. We are done almost with how the AI trust layer will work, how we should be able to configure, how it works in a context grounding, how it will work for a different product. And when we go in the next session, we'll talk about the agent builder, and there we should be able to showcase you how that will be utilized into the agent builder. So with this, I'll open the forum for the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We should be able to answer.
Yeah,
But I,
Satish, I'm cutting you off. Just
Go ahead, please.
or in that UiPath is not providing something for that, or some other technique, or maybe functionality for that, that I just drag and drop some activity and it will just give me something to mask my data with that I'm providing to the LLM, or whether I have to do it.
No, that is there. So I already showcased you one activity. This is the activity that you can drag and drop, and all you need to do is pass that data. So there is already activity which filters PI and PHI filtration activity. There is already a
okay. Sorry, I might have missed that one. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
I have put the complete video, and I'll put again the complete setup, right? How you can do that in the chat as well. Okay. And for you, Satish, right? There are a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe I can just read them, and maybe Satish, we want to go to that slide. Yes, correct.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so guys, these are some of the question and answer FAQ which we see, right? So in case you have any questions which is not answered here, feel free to put it on the chat. And Satish, there is a question from Daniela. Daniela, you are there on the call? Okay, but I can read the question anyways. So the question is, how can we implement PII customized policy in our as per our organization need?
Yeah, so that's a very good question actually, and I briefly touched based upon that there are asks from multiple customers how we should be able to implement our guardrails, right? And that feature is still not live. So I told you, one is we being a customer, we are responsible what we are sending to the LLM model. So we need to make sure that we are not sending any PII and PHI data to the LLM model. That's the first thing. Harmful content moderation is already been done by the LLM provider policy, but UiPath will additionally give you a screen where you should be able to configure some of those guardrails according to your organization policy to control and restrict those behaviors. That is in progress. Maybe it will come in 25.4 or 25.6. So we have to wait for that update. But the work is in progress, I can tell you.
Great. Do I have Chetan on the call? Chetan Srivastav still there? Okay. I can ask the question. So Chetan has a question, right? Satish, that if I have updated a policy at a tenant level and then I have updated some policies at the group level, right? Which one take precedence?
Yeah, so it's basically on the priority, and some of the product policy happens on, mostly if you look at that, right? AI trust layer policies and autopilot policy and agent builder policies, they happens on a tenant level in a priority order, right? That
Yeah.
group level policy is still not enabled for these product. Group level policy is available for other products like a studio, where you can configure the policies for the developer, configure the policy for some set of user. That is currently not for these products.
Great. And guys, if you have any follow-up question or anything you want to ask, you can just raise your hand so I can call you directly. The next question is, we have seen that we can now bring our own custom LLM, right? So when we actually use them, are we still going to get the usage summary of the custom model from UiPath?
Yeah, so that is, still a very,
it's in preview.
It's in a preview, and how the product will turn out, we don't know, because if many customers will ask that, UiPath might bring some feature, but as of now, as we are bringing our own model, we would be responsible for deploying that. We'll be responsible for monitoring that will be responsible for monitoring that overuses, and guardrails will be responsible for making sure that it is a secure deployment, nothing goes and nothing happens there. So the short answer is LM, it has to be configured at LM provider level. In future, UiPath may or may not bring some features where you can see that how many call has happened for that.
Understood. You want to move to the next slide and with the FAQ, and meanwhile I can ask the next question. Yeah, thanks, Satish. Okay, so this question is from Aishwarya Jyoti. She asked that if I update my custom model, right, will it automatically get updated into my UiPath suite?
It doesn't happen that way. So
Yeah.
how it happens is in the let's take example of Azure OpenAI, right? So you have a deployment, right? You have a deployment for ChatGPT 4.0 with some API version. Next time, what you did is with some data playing and some fine tuning and something, you deployed another variant of that, right? That means you have bumped that version of that particular model with the different deployment name. So all you need to do is you need to come here on integration services, make a new connection, and then it will be automatically included in all the LLM call happens after that.
Yeah, great. So Satish, that were the questions online. Other we have answered on the chat. These were the open questions and I have asked them all. So guys, if you have any question, feel free to put it on the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the question. Or maybe if there are more participants, you can just raise your hands. And guys, make sure that you register for the next sessions. And before you guys leave, I would request you to just put your learnings over LinkedIn, tag us. We would appreciate your feedback. Tell your network that you are learning about agentic automation. That will help your friends, your company, your organization know that yes, my resource is learning something new, right? So feel free to share it. Okay.
So there is a
So yeah,
a one question about the costing details, right?
yeah.
When we can know about the costing detail. So costing detail will basically, you will have some product having different way of measurement, right? For agent, you will have agent unit. For document understanding, you have AI unit. For robots, you have robot unit, right? So for each activity, there will be a consumption-based model, and that will be linked to those AI units or agent units. And the cost of those units or agent unit is still not known because the product is still to go in production live in April release, which is April 25.4. So we have to wait for a few days before it can be, basically go live and can be utilized by everyone.
Great. So I don't see any more questions, Satish. And guys, again, the recording and the presentation would be uploaded on the same link where you have registered, right? So that's it, guys. Any last word from you, Satish, Andrea, Anna?
No, I just wanted to, this is today's session was more related to how, the security and governance that has happened. But in the next session, we'll be actually building a UiPath, agents, right? Which is the main theme of this entire webinar series. So we'll be doing, a full-fledged deep dive on how UiPath Agent Builder can be utilized to build the agents, and that will be really, really helpful. But all these concepts are required to know before that we can actually hit that, running the ground, right? So I'll encourage everyone to, uh, join that, register for that. If you have not registered, feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, we should be able to answer and guide you to move your RPA career from RPA to agentic automation.
Great. So yes, over to you, Andrea, and we are good to close.
Thank you all for attending. See you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Thank
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
you.
Thanks.